Most people don't realize how much of their life is spent trying to hold everything together, holding on to relationships that have run their course, gripping tightly to plans that no longer feel true, or clinging to an idea of success that was never really yours. The Buddha taught that suffering is born in this endless need to control, to grasp, to prove. And the irony is, the more you care about forcing life into your blueprint, the more it resists you. Today, I want to share something that might feel radical but could change everything. The moment you stop caring so much about how things appear and start caring about how they feel, life begins to flow naturally. It softens. It meets you with more grace than you thought possible. In this video, we're going to explore gentle, practical ways to let go of the noise, the pressure, and the hidden fear that keeps you stuck. If you feel tired of overthinking and performing, stay with me until the end, because every part of what we'll talk about builds a foundation for peace you can actually feel. And if you appreciate having a space like this where ancient wisdom meets everyday life, there's one simple, free favor I'd be grateful for. Just tap the subscribe button so you don't miss any of these conversations. And please don't skip any part of this video, because the next few moments might be exactly what your spirit has been waiting for. It's easy to think that caring deeply about everything is the mark of a good person, someone who is responsible, passionate, and fully engaged in life. But there's a quiet line you cross without noticing, a line where caring shifts into clinging. And that clinging doesn't feel like love or commitment. It feels like anxiety. The Buddha often spoke about how attachment is the root of suffering, not because caring itself is wrong, but because when your peace depends on a certain outcome, you become a prisoner of circumstances you can't control. You start to measure your worth by whether things go exactly as you hoped, and every setback feels personal. Every disappointment feels like a judgment on who you are. Think about how often you've replayed a conversation, trying to make sense of what someone said or worrying about how you came across. You convince yourself that if you just try harder, think more, prepare more, you'll finally feel secure. But the truth is, no amount of overthinking will give you the peace that comes from simply letting go. When you're constantly chasing approval or fearing what might go wrong, you create an invisible tension that seeps into everything. People can feel it even if you don't say a word. It's like trying to hold water in your hands by gripping tighter. The faster you close your fist, the faster the water slips away. Buddhist wisdom invites us to loosen that grip, to notice when caring becomes a desperate need for validation. The moment you stop demanding that everything work out perfectly is the moment you start to breathe again. You start to realize you can care about a relationship or a goal without losing yourself in it. You can love without being consumed, commit without becoming dependent, and try without tying your identity to the result. This is not indifference. It's a higher form of respect, both for yourself and for life itself. When you practice this gentle detachment, you give yourself room to respond instead of react. You discover a new kind of strength, one that doesn't need to control every outcome to feel safe. The Buddha taught that freedom begins where attachment ends. So today, ask yourself gently, where am I gripping too tightly? What would it feel like to trust instead? You might find that life doesn't fall apart when you release your hold. It actually starts to flow with a natural ease you've been searching for all along. There's a quiet relief in understanding that you don't have to exhaust yourself proving your worth every single day. So many of us were raised to believe that if we just try harder, achieve more, and stay constantly productive, we will finally be enough. We pour our energy into striving to be the perfect partner, the perfect employee, the perfect friend. But the Buddha taught that this endless proving is an illusion that steals your peace. He reminded us that real freedom begins when you recognize your value is already here, unchanging, no matter what you do or don't accomplish. Think about the way a tree stands in the forest. It doesn't strain to be noticed or force itself to grow faster. It simply grows because that's its nature. The sun shines on it whether it tries hard or not. You too have an inner worth that is not earned by pushing yourself past your limits. It is something you were born with, something that has never left you even in your hardest moments. But when you're caught in the habit of constant effort, it's easy to lose sight of that truth. You start to believe that every small mistake is proof that you're failing, that every success must be immediately followed by another to justify your place in the world. What if you gave yourself permission to stop measuring your value in output? What if you allowed your presence to be enough? This doesn't mean you stop caring about your responsibilities or abandon your goals. It simply means you release the idea that you are only worthy if you're achieving. The Buddha often said that clinging to any identity, even the identity of the achiever, creates suffering because it traps you in a cycle that never ends. When you reach one milestone, the mind immediately creates a new one, and your peace gets postponed again and again. There's something almost invisible about worry. It sneaks in so quietly that you hardly notice it's taken over your thoughts. One moment you're going about your day, and the next you're lost in a fog of what-ifs, convinced that every small detail holds the power to unravel everything you care about. The Buddha taught that this is one of the most common traps of the human mind, confusing thoughts with reality. When you look closely, you'll see that anxiety is almost never about what's happening right here, right now. It's about a story your mind is telling, a prediction about a future you can't control. And in that story, you're always bracing for the worst. Think about how often your mind drifts into rehearsing problems that don't exist yet. You replay conversations that haven't happened. You imagine losses that haven't occurred. You prepare yourself to be disappointed before life has even unfolded. The cost of this habit is enormous. Every moment spent worrying is a moment stolen from presence. While your mind is in tomorrow, your body is here, breathing, waiting for you to return. The Buddha described mindfulness as the gentle art of coming back. Each time you notice that your thoughts have wandered into fear, you have a chance to practice this return. It's not about scolding yourself for worrying. It's about gently bringing your attention back to the only place life ever happens, right now. When you anchor yourself in the present moment, you start to see that most fears are like shadows, big and looming when you look at them from far away, but small and harmless when you turn toward them with awareness. One simple practice is to ask yourself, is this problem real in this moment, or is it just a thought? You'll be amazed by how often you find that nothing is actually happening except the story in your mind. This question doesn't erase your challenges, but it brings you back into your body, back into the here and now, where you have the power to breathe, to respond, and to choose. This is why Buddhist teachings remind us that peace isn't something you have to chase, it's already here, underneath the layers of anticipation. When you learn to return to this breath, this moment, you begin to see how much lighter life feels without carrying the weight of imagined futures. So many of us spend years believing that if we can just hold on a little tighter, things will finally turn out the way we want. We convince ourselves that if we stay vigilant, plan every detail, and anticipate every possible problem, we'll feel safe. But the truth is, all that gripping and bracing only makes life feel heavier. The Buddha spoke often about the suffering that comes from clinging, not just to people or possessions, but to our ideas of how everything should be. He called this attachment, and it's one of the most common sources of our anxiety and disappointment. When you begin to see that trying to control everything is exhausting you rather than protecting you, you open yourself to another way of living, one rooted in surrender. Surrender isn't about giving up or pretending you don't care. It's about acknowledging that you've done your part, and now it's time to let life unfold on its own terms. Think about the times you've held water in your hands. The more you tried to clutch it, the quicker it slipped through your fingers. But when your hands were open, the water could rest there peacefully. Life is like that too. The tighter you hold, the more you struggle. When you release your grip, you create space for things to flow naturally. This doesn't mean you stop putting in effort or caring about what matters to you. It means you stop trying to force outcomes that were never fully in your control to begin with. When you practice surrender, you start to notice subtle shifts. Your mind feels clearer because it's not weighed down by endless scenarios of what if. You begin to see opportunities and solutions that were hidden behind your anxiety. People feel more comfortable around you because you're no longer radiating the energy of tension and expectation. The Buddha taught that surrender is the beginning of freedom. It's the quiet confidence that comes when you trust your intentions and trust the natural intelligence of life to meet you halfway. Surrender is an act of courage because it asks you to believe in something bigger than your plans, something wiser and often more compassionate. It invites you to trust that just because you can't see every step ahead doesn't mean the path isn't there. And in that trust, you discover a deeper kind of strength, the strength that doesn't come from controlling everything, but from knowing you don't have to. One of the hardest things to accept is that life doesn't always go according to plan. You can work tirelessly, set clear goals, and do everything right, and still watch something fall apart. It's in those moments that attachment shows up the strongest, the need to have things look exactly the way you pictured them. But the Buddha taught that attachment is one of the main roots of suffering. When you hold too tightly to an outcome, you end up feeling frustrated, disappointed, and sometimes even bitter when reality doesn't match your expectations. It's like trying to keep a river in a straight line with your bare hands. The more you fight the current, the more exhausted you become. When you ease up on that grip, something surprising happens. You start to notice possibilities you couldn't see before. You begin to feel a little lighter, even when things are uncertain. Non-attachment doesn't mean you stop caring about your dreams or that you give up on effort. It simply means you don't chain your happiness to whether things unfold perfectly. You give yourself permission to adapt, to pivot, and to trust that sometimes not getting what you wanted is the doorway to something better. In Buddhist practice, this openness is called beginner's mind, meeting each situation without the rigid story of how it has to be. Think about a time you were sure something had to work out in a certain way, a job you thought you needed, a person you believed would never leave, a plan you were convinced would bring you peace. And then, when it didn't happen or it ended, you might have felt like you were losing everything. But later, you probably realized that life was guiding you somewhere you didn't expect. You saw that you had been holding on to a narrow version of possibility. Non-attachment invites you to step beyond that narrowness. Instead of gripping so hard, you can approach each moment with curiosity. You can ask, what else could this become? What is life trying to show me here? When you stop caring whether every door stays open, you'll notice windows you never even knew existed. This openness doesn't weaken your intention, it strengthens it. Because you're no longer acting from fear of loss, you're acting from trust in the unfolding, and in that trust, you become free. Sometimes we don't even realize how much control we're trying to hold over every little thing. We think if we plan enough, double-check enough, or push hard enough, we'll finally feel safe. But the Buddha often reminded his followers that all this gripping is really a disguise for fear. It's the fear that if you don't manage everything perfectly, life will collapse. But the truth is, life was never meant to be micromanaged. It has a rhythm of its own, and the more you try to force it, the more tired and disconnected you feel. When you slowly start to let go of that constant need to oversee every detail, you make room for something softer and more supportive to enter your life. You start to feel like you're not carrying the entire world on your shoulders anymore. This doesn't mean you stop caring about what matters to you. It means you learn to trust that you don't have to do everything alone. When you release the belief that your worth depends on how much you can hold together, you realize your energy is precious and it deserves to be spent wisely. The Buddha taught that trust isn't passive. It's an active, courageous choice to meet life as it is instead of constantly resisting it. When you choose trust over control, you start to notice all the ways life has been trying to help you all along. The right people cross your path, unexpected opportunities appear, and small solutions show up in places you'd never think to look. Think about how many times you've tried to force something, a relationship, a career move, a personal change, only to watch it fall apart or drain you completely. And then think of those rare times you allowed yourself to step back, take a breath, and let life unfold in its own timing. More often than not, those were the moments that turned out better than you planned. That's the quiet wisdom of letting go. It doesn't mean you stop showing up with love and effort. It just means you stop believing you have to grip every outcome to be okay. You trust that life has an intelligence far greater than your fear. When you start practicing this, you may feel uneasy at first. You might think, but if I don't control it, everything will fall apart. But over time, you'll see that loosening your grip doesn't create chaos. It creates space for peace and unexpected blessings to find you. There's something deeply comforting about realizing you don't have to keep chasing peace as if it's always somewhere far away. For so many of us, it feels like life is one long race toward the next achievement, the next relationship, or the next milestone that promises we'll finally feel okay. But no matter how much we accomplish or how many boxes we tick, that feeling of restlessness often comes back. The Buddha often spoke about this craving as a cycle, an endless wheel of desire that spins us away from the present moment. He taught that when we're always seeking something just out of reach, we overlook the quiet contentment that has been here all along, waiting under the noise. And it's easy to believe that peace is hiding in some future moment when everything lines up perfectly. You might tell yourself, I'll relax when my finances are better, or I'll feel whole when the right person loves me. But every time you postpone your peace for a later date, you reinforce the idea that your happiness depends on something outside of yourself. In truth, peace isn't a destination you arrive at. It's an inner state you return to again and again, no matter what's happening around you. When you stop caring so much about achieving the perfect version of your life, you create space for presence. And in that space, peace naturally emerges. Think about the moments when you felt most content. They probably weren't when everything was flawless. Maybe it was a quiet afternoon when you allowed yourself to just sit and breathe, or when you stopped overanalyzing a problem and simply trusted that clarity would come in time. Those moments happen when you drop the struggle and let yourself be exactly where you are. Buddhist teachings call this the practice of non-striving. It doesn't mean you stop growing or lose your ambition. It means you stop believing that you have to wrestle life into submission to feel at ease. When you stop chasing peace, it arrives gently, like a bird that feels safe enough to land in your open hands. You realize you don't need to grip so tightly to control, validation, or certainty. You only need to soften your expectations and trust that your breath, your awareness, and your presence are enough. That's when life starts to feel less like a battle and more like a dance, one you don't have to lead, just join step by step, moment by moment. When you learn to stop chasing what you think you need, you uncover the quiet strength that was always within you. Life doesn't have to be forced to be beautiful. Thank you for sharing this moment with me and for being a part of Buddhist Journey. If today's message spoke to your heart, there's another video waiting right here that will help you keep exploring this path of gentle transformation. From my heart to yours, thank you for walking this journey together. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for the perfect moment to finally step into who they were meant to be. They wait for the right mood, the right opportunity, the right sign from the universe that it's finally time to begin. But the Buddha taught that the moment you're waiting for is already here. This very breath, this very day, is the only doorway you'll ever need to walk through to start changing your life. The longer you keep telling yourself that tomorrow will feel easier, the more you train your mind to stay exactly where you are, stuck in the same patterns, the same doubts, the same excuses. And you deserve better than that. You deserve a life that reflects your true potential, not just your old habits. Today I'm going to share powerful insights that will help you break out of that cycle and build a foundation of discipline, clarity, and purpose. This isn't about chasing perfection or proving yourself to anyone else. It's about reclaiming your ability to lead your own life from the inside out. So, if you feel like you're ready to stop waiting and start moving, stay with me until the end of this video. Every part of what we're about to explore builds on the last, and by the time we're done, you'll have the tools you need to step onto your own path with courage. And if you appreciate having a space where ancient Buddhist wisdom meets real everyday struggles, there's a simple, free favor I'd love to ask you. Just tap the subscribe button. It helps us keep growing this community and sharing these teachings with more people who need them. And please don't skip ahead. Give yourself the gift of staying present. You never know which idea might be the spark that changes everything for you. It's easy to look around and blame everyone else for why things aren't working out the way you hoped. Maybe you tell yourself that your boss holds you back, that your family doesn't understand you, that society is unfair, or that the timing is never right. These stories feel comforting because they take the pressure off. If it's always someone else's fault, then you never have to look in the mirror and ask the harder question: what am I doing to contribute to this? But Buddhism teaches that liberation starts the moment you accept responsibility for your own mind, your own choices, and your own path. The Buddha said, "You are your own master. You make your own future," and that's not an accusation, it's an invitation to reclaim your power. When you look honestly at your life, you'll see that many of the circumstances you find yourself in were shaped by small decisions you made over and over again. The decision to procrastinate instead of acting. The decision to avoid a hard conversation. The decision to numb your feelings with distraction rather than sit with them. None of this makes you bad or broken. It just means you've been living on autopilot, letting your habits steer your destiny. And the truth is, no one else can change that but you. Even the Buddha couldn't do the work for his disciples. He offered the path, but each person had to walk it themselves. I know it feels heavy to admit that you are responsible for the life you have right now. It means you have to face your own inconsistencies, your own avoidance, your own excuses. But it's also the most freeing realization you'll ever have. Because if your choices created this, your choices can also create something new. You don't have to keep repeating the same patterns. You don't have to stay small or keep waiting for permission to grow. You can decide right here and now that this chapter of your life will look different because you're going to show up differently. You know, it's almost a universal habit to wait for something outside of us to kickstart our transformation. We think, once I get that promotion, once my family finally understands me, once I feel motivated, then I'll change. But all that waiting just postpones the life you're meant to be living. The Buddha often reminded his followers that clinging to conditions, whether it's perfect timing or perfect circumstances, is the source of unnecessary suffering. Because while you're sitting there waiting for the right moment to arrive, life keeps moving forward without you. Time slips by quietly. And one day you wake up and realize you've spent months, maybe years, just circling the same old patterns, telling yourself stories about why you can't begin. There is a kind of gentle courage that comes with admitting that no one is going to come do this for you. Your parents can't do it. Your partner can't do it. Even the most loving teacher or mentor can't do it. They can inspire you, they can point the way, but at the end of the day, you have to be the one to stand up and take the first step. The Buddha taught that each of us is responsible for our own liberation. It doesn't matter how many teachings you've read or how many hours you've spent thinking about your goals. Change only starts when you decide you are no longer available to keep living in the same way. That means looking at your life honestly, without sugarcoating or blaming. It means asking yourself, where am I playing small? What habits are quietly stealing my potential? What have I been putting off because it's uncomfortable to face? The answers to these questions might sting a little. That's okay. You're not here to shame yourself. You're here to reclaim your power by seeing things clearly. Because if you created your current reality with your old decisions, that means you can create a new reality with new decisions. That's not weakness. That's a profound kind of strength. Most people don't realize how quietly their daily habits shape the entire direction of their life. It doesn't usually happen with some big dramatic choice. It happens in all the little decisions you make without thinking. The Buddha often reminded his followers that the mind becomes conditioned by whatever we practice over and over again. If you keep practicing distraction, avoidance, and impulsiveness, you end up with a life that feels scattered and out of your control. And that's why cleaning up your habits isn't just a nice idea. It's essential if you want to feel steady, clear, and strong within yourself. Think about how you start your mornings. Those first moments set the tone for everything. If you wake up and immediately reach for your phone to scroll through other people's lives, you're training your mind to be reactive. You're telling yourself that other people's noise is more important than your own clarity. And when you do that day after day, you create a groove in your mind that makes it harder to focus, harder to stay grounded, and harder to follow through on your own goals. Buddhism teaches that our habits are like seeds. Whatever we plant and nurture will eventually grow. If you plant seeds of chaos, you harvest chaos. But if you plant seeds of mindful action, you harvest peace and purpose. It helps to be radically honest with yourself about what's actually happening in your daily routines. No judgment, no guilt, just truth. Ask yourself, what am I doing when no one's watching? Where am I spending my time and energy? What are the small invisible patterns that keep pulling me away from what matters most? It's not about being perfect overnight. It's about recognizing that every repeated choice is building either your future or your frustration. The Buddha said that a disciplined mind brings happiness. That discipline doesn't appear by accident. It grows when you stop waiting for the right feeling and start creating the right systems. There's something subtle that most people don't realize about discipline. It isn't about having superhuman willpower or never feeling tired or doubtful. It's about creating a way of life that makes it easier to stay consistent than to slip back into old patterns. The Buddha often spoke about the importance of right effort, the steady, patient energy you bring to each day, no matter how ordinary it seems. He taught that liberation doesn't come from one grand gesture, but from the simple, repeated choice to show up fully for your own life. Think about how often we look at someone we admire, a person who seems focused, organized, always moving forward, and we tell ourselves that they must have some hidden strength we don't. But the truth is, they probably just learned how to protect their time and energy from the 1,000 little things that can drain it. They decided that their growth mattered more than staying comfortable. And that decision is available to you too, right here exactly as you are. When you start to build stronger habits, it's not about transforming yourself overnight or forcing yourself to be perfect. It's about cleaning up the small daily behaviors that quietly steal your momentum. Maybe you've noticed how easy it is to fill your day with distractions, scrolling through your phone without thinking, checking messages that don't really matter, letting the hours drift by while you promise yourself you'll get serious later. This is why the Buddha taught that mindfulness is the foundation of discipline. Because you can't change what you won't look at honestly. One powerful practice is to create small rituals that ground you in presence and purpose. For example, you might start the morning by sitting quietly, even for just 5 minutes, focusing on your breath and asking yourself, what is one thing I will do today to honor my potential? It doesn't have to be complicated. The simplicity is what makes it powerful. Over time, these small acts of awareness build a kind of quiet strength inside you, a strength that isn't shaken by setbacks or temporary feelings. When you think about what really shapes your life, it's easy to point to the big moments, graduations, breakups, promotions, losses. But the truth is, who you become isn't built in those loud milestones. It's built quietly in the background when no one is watching. This is something the Buddha understood so well. He taught that it's not the grand gestures, but the tiny daily actions that create your karma and shape your destiny. You can tell everyone you're serious about your goals, that you're committed to becoming your best self, but none of that matters if you can't hold yourself accountable when the room is empty and there's no applause. It's in those ordinary hours when you decide whether you're going to keep your word to yourself or slip back into the comfort of old habits. Maybe you've noticed how easy it is to be disciplined when other people are counting on you, when you have deadlines, when your reputation is on the line. But what about when you're the only one who will ever know whether you followed through? That's the real test. Anyone can perform when the pressure is external. It takes an entirely different kind of strength to stay true to your standards simply because you've decided that your word matters. This is why Buddhism teaches so much about self-observation, becoming the witness of your own life gently but honestly. Ask yourself, who are you when no one is checking in? Are you still showing up for your commitments even when you don't feel motivated? Are you still doing the small things, keeping your space clean, honoring your routines, caring for your body and mind? Or do you wait until circumstances force your hand? It's not about being perfect, and it's certainly not about shame. It's about realizing that your consistency in private is what eventually shows up as confidence in public. When you learn to be accountable to yourself, you stop needing other people to push you. You become your own guide, your own source of discipline, your own example of what is possible when you lead yourself with integrity. Most people carry this picture in their mind of who they want to become. Someone calm under pressure, disciplined when life gets messy, courageous when fear shows up. But instead of stepping into that version of themselves, they wait for some magical day when they'll feel ready, confident, or perfectly prepared. The Buddha taught that the mind creates endless illusions that keep us from acting. He called it Maya, the veil that makes us believe we must first become something before we can live as that person. But the truth is, you don't become your best self by waiting for permission or inspiration. You become that person by practicing their qualities now, in the middle of your doubts and imperfections. It helps to think of it like training a muscle you've never used before. At first, every rep feels awkward and weak. You question if you're doing it right, if it's working, if you should even bother. But over time, through repetition, that muscle grows stronger. Your mind works the same way. If you keep practicing the habits of the person you admire, eventually you won't feel like you're faking it anymore. You'll feel like you've become it because you have. The Buddha often reminded his followers that every great transformation begins with small, almost invisible steps. He said, "A jug fills drop by drop." That means you don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You just need to start showing up in alignment with the life you say you want, one drop at a time. When you stop waiting to feel ready and start behaving like the person you respect, your identity shifts. You move from someone who hopes to someone who acts. You start to build a life rooted in self-respect instead of excuses. And that's where real transformation begins, not in thoughts, but in the simple, steady practice of being who you say you want to be, long before you feel like you've earned it. Sometimes the hardest thing to admit is that we've been sitting in the same spot for far too long. You know the feeling, when every part of you knows it's time to move forward, But you keep coming up with reasons to stay where you are. Maybe you've told yourself it's not the right time, or that you'll feel more ready later. Maybe you've convinced yourself that once everything else calms down, you'll finally take that first real step. But the Buddha taught that life isn't going to pause for you to feel comfortable enough to grow. In fact, one of the biggest illusions is believing that comfort is safety. Because what feels safe in the moment, avoiding, delaying, making excuses, is actually what keeps you stuck in cycles of frustration and regret. Excuses are clever. They sound reasonable, even caring. I'm too tired. I'm too busy. I don't want to fail. But if you look a little closer, you'll see that these excuses are just stories designed to protect you from the discomfort of change. The Buddha often reminded his followers that clinging to old habits, even when they cause suffering, feels easier than stepping into the unknown. But he also taught that freedom comes from seeing clearly. When you shine the light of awareness on your excuses, you realize they are flimsy barriers, not real walls. The moment you decide to stop believing them is the same moment you begin to reclaim your power. What's powerful is that you don't have to tackle everything at once. You don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight. You simply have to stop defending the limitations that have kept you small. That might mean getting honest about the ways you've been using busyness to avoid what matters. It might mean admitting that your comfort zone has become a cage. It might mean choosing to act before you feel fully ready. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable, but that discomfort is the price of your growth, and it's a price worth paying. Most people don't realize how easily time slips through their fingers until they look back and see how many days were spent just trying to keep up. It's almost like we fall into a trance, scrolling, reacting, distracting ourselves with things that feel urgent but have no lasting meaning. The Buddha often reminded his followers that life is precious because it is impermanent. Every hour you spend is an hour you can never reclaim. When you really sit with that, it can feel overwhelming, but it can also feel empowering, because it means you get to decide, right now, how you will use the hours ahead of you. If you're honest, you already know where your time is leaking away. It's in those endless moments of checking your phone, refreshing your email, or replaying the same worries over and over in your mind. It's in the habits that feel comforting because they don't ask anything of you. No effort, no discomfort, no risk of failure. But when the Buddha taught about mindfulness, he wasn't just talking about meditation. He was teaching that mindful living requires seeing clearly how your actions either bring you closer to peace or pull you further away. If your days are crowded with tasks that don't nurture your growth, that's not an accident. It's a pattern. And any pattern can be changed once you decide it matters enough to change it. Using your time better doesn't mean you have to cram every minute with productivity. It means you become deliberate. You choose what deserves your attention and what doesn't. You decide that your focus is too valuable to give away to every little distraction, and you get comfortable saying no to the requests, the notifications, the habits that cost you your potential. The Buddha described this as guarding the gates of the senses, being watchful about what you allow in, because what you allow in shapes your mind. When you start treating your hours like they matter, you'll notice you feel calmer. You'll start ending the day with a quiet sense of satisfaction instead of regret. Most people don't realize that one of the greatest acts of courage isn't pushing yourself harder or adding more to your plate. It's getting radically honest about what's really holding you back. You'd be amazed how many people spend their whole lives circling around the same problems because they refuse to pause and look at them without judgment. The Buddha taught that awareness is the first step toward liberation. He said, "Just as a solid rock is not shaken by the storm, even so the wise are not affected by praise or blame." That means you don't need to fear the truth about your own habits and patterns. When you can see them clearly, they lose the power to keep you stuck. Take a moment to think about the areas of your life where you keep feeling frustrated. Maybe it's your health, your finances, your relationships, or simply your energy and focus. Beneath all of that frustration is usually something you haven't faced honestly. Maybe you tell yourself you're too busy, but the reality is you haven't set clear priorities. Maybe you say you don't have the right opportunities, but you've been procrastinating on the ones you already have. Or maybe you've convinced yourself that you're not ready when, deep down, you're scared of failing. These aren't flaws, they're simply places that need your attention and compassion, not your denial. The Buddha didn't say that truth would always feel comfortable. He taught that sometimes awareness stings before it sets you free. But pretending things are fine, when there not only keeps you living in circles, you can't transform what you won't even acknowledge. So ask yourself the difficult questions. What excuses have you been repeating? What stories have you been telling yourself about why you can't change? What habits have you normalized, even though you know they're costing you your peace and progress? When you answer those questions honestly, without blaming yourself or anyone else, you start to reclaim your power. It's like switching on a light in a dark room. You finally see where the obstacles are, and you can begin to clear them out. That clarity is worth more than any motivation quote or temporary burst of inspiration. Because when you know exactly what's been keeping you small, you can stop tiptoeing around your potential and start stepping into it fully. This is the quiet strength the Buddha spoke of, the willingness to look within, not to criticize yourself, but to free yourself. Most people spend so much time talking about how they want their life to change, but very few ever take the steps that prove they're serious. It's easy to fall into the habit of telling yourself, "I'll get to it when I feel ready," or "I just need to be in the right mindset." But the truth is, readiness doesn't come before action, it grows because of it. The Buddha often reminded his followers that the seeds of transformation are planted not through wishful thinking, but through the simple, deliberate acts we do over and over again. Your habits, your choices, your small daily efforts, these are the real proof that you're committed to becoming the person you want to be. You don't need to have everything figured out before you begin. In fact, trying to wait for clarity is often just another way of delaying. What matters is that you start moving in the direction you say you want to go. Maybe that means waking up 30 minutes earlier to meditate, even if your body protests. Maybe it means putting your phone in another room so you can focus on the project you've been avoiding. Maybe it means having the uncomfortable conversation you've been putting off because you're afraid of what might happen. None of these actions are glamorous. No one is going to throw you a parade for showing up when you'd rather hide. But that's exactly why they're powerful. They prove to you and no one else that you're willing to do the work when it counts. It's important to remember that action isn't about perfection. You will have days when you fall short. You will slip into old habits. You'll feel resistance that makes you question whether any of it matters. But each time you choose to take another step instead of giving up, you weaken the hold of your excuses and strengthen your belief in yourself. The Buddha taught that the mind is like a field. Whatever seeds you plant, be it fear or effort, will eventually grow. If you keep planting the seeds of discipline and self-responsibility, you'll wake up one day to a life that looks completely different. Not because luck found you, but because you cultivated it with steady, patient action. Before you go, take a moment to remember this. Every step you take, no matter how small, is a step away from who you were and closer to who you're meant to be. You don't have to wait for the perfect moment or the perfect version of yourself to begin. You just have to start with honesty, with courage, and with a commitment to keep showing up. Thank you for sharing this time with me and for being part of Buddhist Journey. If you're ready to keep growing and uncover more wisdom to guide your path, watch one of the videos waiting for you here on the screen. Until we meet again, stay present, stay kind to yourself, and never forget that change begins with you. Most people will spend their entire lives believing every single thought their mind throws at them. They'll wake up each morning already carrying the weight of old doubts, regrets, and fears, as if these thoughts were facts carved into stone. But here's the truth that so many never hear. You are not your thoughts. The Buddha taught that the mind is like a restless monkey, always jumping from branch to branch, never satisfied, never still. And if you don't learn to guide it, it will lead you into confusion, anxiety, and constant suffering. But the moment you begin to question the stories in your head, you discover something powerful. There is a calm, steady awareness beneath all that noise. A part of you that has always been free. Today I'm going to share how you can take back control of your mind and stop letting your thoughts run your life. If you stay with me until the end of this video, you're going to learn practical ways rooted in Buddhist wisdom to quiet the mental chatter, find clarity, and finally feel at peace with yourself. I promise you, every part of this conversation matters, so don't skip ahead or you'll miss the insights that could completely shift the way you see yourself. And if you appreciate the heart and effort we put into making these videos for you, if you feel this message is something the world needs a little more of, there's a simple free favor I'd love to ask. Just tap that subscribe button. It helps this channel grow and keeps these teachings alive for everyone who's searching for a little more peace in a noisy world. It's almost unsettling when you realize how many thoughts drift through your mind in a single day. Some mornings you wake up and it feels like 1,000 different voices are already chattering in your head before your feet even touch the floor. One is telling you to hurry, another is worried about something you said yesterday, another is already doubting if you're good enough. Most people never stop to question where these thoughts come from or whether they deserve any attention. They just let them swirl around, shaping their mood, decisions, and sense of self-worth. The Buddha often spoke about this mental clutter, describing the mind as a wild elephant that needs training. If you never learn to hold the reins, that elephant will trample your peace without hesitation. When you start to see your thoughts more like visitors instead of unshakable truths, everything changes. Imagine your mind as a house. Would you really let any stranger wander in, track mud on the floor, and tell you how to feel? Yet that's exactly what we do with thoughts. We don't question them, we don't set any boundaries, we simply accept them, and over time, they become part of the furniture. This is why so many people feel exhausted or stuck. Their mental space has become so crowded with unfiltered noise that they can't hear their own wisdom anymore. Buddhist teachings encourage us to become aware, to step back and watch the mind without getting pulled into every storyline. The next time you catch yourself believing something like, "I'm not capable," or "I always mess things up," pause. Ask yourself, is this thought actually helpful? Is this rooted in reality, or just a tired old habit? Because thoughts are not commands. They are not prophecies. They are simply passing phenomena like clouds drifting across the sky. You don't have to follow everyone. This practice isn't about pretending that everything is wonderful all the time. It's about taking responsibility for what you allow to stay in your mind. When you choose which thoughts deserve space and which ones need to be released, you start reclaiming your power. It feels unfamiliar at first, maybe even uncomfortable, but it's the beginning of true freedom. You become the gatekeeper of your own mind, and slowly, with compassion and discipline, you create an inner space that feels clear, steady, and strong. That's where peace lives. It's strange how easily we trust the voice in our head, even when it has been wrong so many times. Think about it. How many moments in your life have you held back or felt ashamed because of something your own mind whispered? The Buddha called these thoughts mental formations, the stories and assumptions we build over years of experience, pain, and habit. They seem so convincing because they wear the mask of familiarity. But familiarity doesn't mean truth. It just means you've rehearsed the same script over and over until it feels real. One of the most powerful shifts you can ever make is learning to recognize when your mind is telling you a story that doesn't serve you anymore. A thought can show up like a quiet little comment. You're not ready. People will judge you. You've failed too many times to try again. And before you know it, you're nodding along, accepting every word as fact. But you have to remember that your thoughts are not commandments. They're not ultimate truths written in stone. They're more like passing clouds drifting across a vast, open sky. The Buddha taught that suffering is often created not by the events themselves, but by the way we cling to our perceptions of them. If you never pause to question whether a thought is helpful or even accurate, you end up living in a prison of your own making. Whenever a thought makes you feel smaller, heavier, or more afraid, treat that as your cue to stop and look closer. Where did this belief come from? Is it something you learned as a child? Did it grow out of a painful memory or a single moment of failure? Just because you've carried it for years doesn't mean it deserves to stay. You can observe it without reacting. You can notice it without letting it drive your decisions. Over time, this practice of gentle investigation becomes second nature. You'll start to feel a subtle space between you and your thoughts, and in that space, you find freedom. You know that moment when you get an idea that lights you up inside. Maybe you feel a spark of excitement to start something new, or you finally feel ready to speak up about something that matters to you. For a second, your heart beats faster and you think, this could really change things. But almost just as quickly, the old familiar voice of fear starts whispering in your ear. It lists every reason you shouldn't act. It tells you you're not prepared, that you'll fail, that other people will judge you. And before you even realize what happened, that spark has dimmed, replaced by hesitation and regret. The Buddha often spoke about this moment, how the mind clings to comfort and familiarity, even when it costs you your own growth. He reminded us that nothing grows in the safety of indecision. When you feel inspired to take action, you have a very small window of time before your brain tries to talk you out of it. Your mind thinks it's protecting you from embarrassment, disappointment, or discomfort. But what it's really doing is locking you in the same old patterns you say you want to leave behind. If you wait too long, if you give your thoughts time to build a case against your courage, you'll almost always decide to stay where you are. That's why it's so important to move quickly, not recklessly but decisively. When you act before fear has a chance to settle in, you interrupt the cycle. You prove to yourself that you are stronger than your doubts. You teach your mind that it no longer gets the final say in whether you move forward. This doesn't mean you have to jump headfirst into massive life changes overnight. It can be as simple as sending the message you've been avoiding, signing up for the class you keep thinking about, or standing up for yourself in a conversation. The Buddha said, there are only two mistakes one can make along the road to truth: not going all the way and not starting. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply begin. Even one small action shifts your energy from fear into momentum. Over time, these little acts of courage add up. You start to see yourself differently, not as someone who hesitates, but as someone who follows through. And in that space between the thought and the action, you reclaim the freedom to create the life you truly want. Some days you wake up and everything just feels heavy. Maybe you didn't sleep well, maybe something stressful is happening, or maybe it's just one of those mornings when you feel low for no clear reason. It happens to everyone. But here's where most people get stuck. They think that because they feel unmotivated, it means they are unmotivated. So they spend the whole day dragging themselves around, convinced they can't do anything worthwhile until their mood magically improves. The Buddha taught that all mental states arise and pass away, just like waves on the ocean. They are temporary. They don't define you. But when you let your mood be in charge of your choices, you give away your power to something that never lasts anyway. Think about how many times you've delayed something important because you just didn't feel like it. Maybe it was starting a new habit, working on a project, or having a conversation you were avoiding. Your feelings told you to wait, so you waited. But waiting didn't make you feel better. It just kept you stuck. This is the quiet trap most people never see. Believing your mood has to be right before you act. The reality is, if you only move when you feel perfect, you'll rarely move at all. The Buddha often reminded his followers that discipline, not emotion, is the foundation of a peaceful mind. It's about showing up for your life no matter what the weather is like inside your head. You don't need to pretend your emotions aren't there. You don't have to slap a smile over sadness or force excitement when you feel tired. But you can gently say to yourself, I feel this, but I'm not going to let it decide my whole day. When you practice this, you start to build a deeper respect for yourself because you prove that you are bigger than any passing mood. Even a small action counts. Maybe you write for 10 minutes instead of an hour. Maybe you go for a short walk instead of skipping exercise completely. Maybe you answer just one email instead of ignoring all of them. These little choices add up. Each time you act in spite of your mood, you grow stronger. You build a kind of quiet confidence that isn't shaken by every wave of emotion. That's the heart of real mental control, knowing that your mood is just a visitor, and you are the one who chooses whether it gets to lead. There's something most people don't realize until their mind feels so heavy they can hardly think straight. Every little distraction you allow into your life piles up. At first, it doesn't seem like a big deal to check your phone every few minutes or say yes to conversations that drain your energy. But over time, all those small interruptions become a thick fog that clouds your thinking and steals your peace. The Buddha often reminded his followers that clarity is the foundation of wise action. He taught that when your mind is cluttered, your decisions are reactive instead of intentional. You start feeling overwhelmed, not because life is truly unmanageable, but because you've allowed too much noise to fill your head. Think about it like this. Your mind is like a clear pool of water. Every unnecessary distraction is a handful of dirt thrown in. 1 or 2 handfuls won't make much difference. But if you keep allowing them, the water becomes muddy, and soon you can't even see the bottom. That's when you lose touch with what matters most. You stop hearing your own inner voice and start following the opinions and expectations of everyone else. And that's when you feel scattered, restless, and strangely disconnected from yourself. The solution is not to run away from the world or pretend you don't care. It's about protecting your mental space with the same respect you'd give to your home. You wouldn't invite people in to track mud all over your floor, so why let thoughts, habits, or people drag clutter into your mind? Buddha taught that mindfulness isn't just sitting quietly with your breath. It's learning to recognize what belongs in your awareness and what doesn't. When you say no to gossip, mindless scrolling, or commitments that drain you, you're not being rude or selfish. You're making space for clarity. It can feel uncomfortable at first to set these boundaries. People might not understand why you're less available or why you're choosing simplicity over constant busyness. But the freedom you gain is worth it. When your mind is clear, you think more creatively. You feel more grounded. You make choices that align with your values, not your fears. Even a few minutes of silence or a conscious decision to step back from distraction can be life-changing. It reminds you that you are in charge of what you allow in. The clearer your mind, the stronger your sense of purpose. And that is a gift no one else can give you. You have to claim it for yourself. There's something almost magnetic about the easy path. It looks gentle, it feels safe, and it rarely asks much from you. But the Buddha warned that chasing comfort without question is like wrapping yourself in a soft blanket that eventually becomes a prison. Most people spend their entire lives choosing what feels pleasant over what will make them stronger. And then they wonder why they feel so unprepared when life challenges them. It's not that they aren't capable. It's that they never practiced facing discomfort. They never trained their mind to stand steady when things get hard. Think about it for a moment. Every time you decide to stay quiet when you know you should speak, you weaken your confidence. Each time you choose to skip the effort, telling yourself you'll get to it tomorrow, you chip away at your own discipline. And when you pick the easy option again and again, you create a pattern of avoiding the very experiences that could build your resilience. The Buddha described this as the path of craving, always reaching for short-term relief and never seeing the long-term cost. Comfort feels good in the moment, but it quietly steals your belief in yourself. It makes you doubt whether you can handle real challenges because you haven't given yourself a chance to prove otherwise. On the other hand, choosing what strengthens you, even when it's uncomfortable, is an act of self-respect. It's how you teach your mind that you can trust yourself to follow through. When you do the thing you've been avoiding, whether it's a difficult conversation, a commitment to your health, or learning a new skill, you start to feel a different kind of energy. It's not the fleeting pleasure of comfort. It's a deep, steady pride that comes from knowing you didn't shrink when things felt heavy. The Buddha encouraged his followers to meet their own resistance with curiosity, not judgment. He knew that the more you turn toward what scares you, the less power fear has over you. There's something most people never want to admit out loud. We all have that one thing we keep avoiding. Maybe it's a conversation you know you need to have, or a habit you've been meaning to change, or a project that feels so big it terrifies you just to think about it. You tell yourself you'll get to it tomorrow or next week, or when life calms down. But the truth is, you're not really waiting for the perfect moment. You're hoping you'll never have to feel the discomfort of facing it. The Buddha often spoke about this human tendency to cling to comfort and familiarity, even when it keeps us trapped in cycles of suffering. He reminded us that real freedom comes when you have the courage to look directly at what scares you, instead of turning away. Think about how many times you felt that tension in your chest whenever the thought of that hard thing came up. It's like your whole body says, "Not now, I'm not ready." And so you distract yourself with smaller, easier tasks, cleaning the house again, scrolling your phone, doing anything that feels productive without actually moving you forward. But if you're honest, you know this is just a way to avoid the very thing that would help you grow. You don't have to shame yourself for this. It's simply the mind's protective reflex, trying to shield you from discomfort. The Buddha taught that the mind is skilled at inventing excuses, weaving stories to keep us in the illusion of safety. But every time you avoid the work that matters, you feed that illusion and shrink your own confidence a little more. It's so important to ask yourself, gently but truthfully, why you keep running from the things that matter most. Is it because you're afraid to fail? Afraid to be seen trying and not getting it perfect? Or maybe it's because you're so used to staying small that you don't trust yourself to handle something bigger. When you bring awareness to these hidden fears, you start to loosen their grip. You don't have to know exactly how to fix everything. You just need to stop pretending you don't see it. The Buddha encouraged his followers to meet each moment as it is, with clarity and compassion. So the next time you feel that urge to run from the hard thing, pause, take a breath. Remind yourself that growth is never comfortable, but it is always worth it. You have carried the weight of avoidance long enough. You deserve the relief that comes from finally facing it, one small step at a time. There's something unsettling about those moments when your mind starts to spin faster than you can keep up. One thought triggers another, and suddenly you're not just thinking, you're spiraling. It feels as though you're stuck inside a storm you can't see but can definitely feel. Your chest tightens, your breath goes shallow, and your body gets tense, as if bracing for something terrible to happen. The Buddha called this the restless mind, that part of us that clings to fears and invents stories about what might go wrong. And in those moments, it's so easy to believe every fearful prediction, every worst-case scenario your mind throws at you. But you don't have to. You don't have to keep feeding that cycle until you're completely drained. One of the most important things you can do when your thoughts are racing is to remember that you don't have to solve everything in that exact moment. The mind tries to convince you that unless you figure everything out right now, something bad will happen. But that urgency is an illusion. It's your mind's way of trying to feel safe by controlling what cannot be controlled. When you notice this happening, take it as a signal, not a command. It's a signal to pause. Just like the Buddha would sit beneath the Bodhi tree in silence, you too can create a little space between yourself and the chaos. Take a slow breath. Exhale even more slowly. Feel the ground under your feet. These small actions may sound simple, but they are powerful. They break the momentum of panic and bring you back to the present moment. You don't need to chase down every thought to calm your mind. In fact, the more you argue with your worries, the stronger they get. What helps instead is stepping back and observing. You can say to yourself, I see that my mind is busy right now. That's okay, this will pass. When you stop fighting your thoughts, they lose their grip on you. You create a sense of spaciousness inside, and from there clarity begins to return. Remember, you are not the storm. You are the sky that holds the storm. The clouds of fear and doubt may gather, but they are temporary. Underneath them, your awareness is clear, steady, and untouched. Trust that. Every time you choose to slow down instead of speeding up with your mind, you strengthen that trust, and you remind yourself that peace is always closer than it seems. There's something most people never realize. The thoughts you replay over and over again are quietly draining the life out of you. You might not even notice it happening because it feels so normal to carry around that background noise of self-criticism and regret. You wake up and immediately remember the thing you said years ago or the failure you still haven't forgiven yourself for. And by the time you've had your first cup of coffee, your mind is already heavy. The Buddha spoke often about how clinging to these thoughts is like picking up a burning coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. You're the one who ends up getting burned. No matter how justified you feel in holding on, the damage is always yours to carry. When you think about all the stories in your mind that make you feel small or powerless, ask yourself honestly, are these thoughts helping me in any way? Are they making me wiser, kinder, or stronger? Or are they just a habit, something you've repeated so often that it feels like truth? You don't have to pretend you're never discouraged or hurt, but you do have to decide which thoughts deserve your precious energy, because the mind only has so much space, and if you fill it with shame, doubt, and fear, you leave no room for the ideas that could actually move you forward. One of the most freeing practices in Buddhism is learning how to let go. It doesn't mean you erase your memories or deny what happened. It means you stop feeding them with your attention. Just because a thought appears doesn't mean you owe it your focus. You can acknowledge it, take a slow breath, and release it like an autumn leaf drifting away on a quiet pond. Every time you practice letting go, you reclaim a little more strength and clarity. It's true that some thoughts will come back again and again, especially if they've been your constant companions for years. That's okay. You don't have to fight them or get frustrated when they return. Just meet them with awareness. Recognize them for what they are, mental echoes, not reality. You get to choose what stays in your mind. And every time you choose peace over rumination, you prove to yourself that you are not at the mercy of your thoughts. You are the one who decides what's worth keeping. When life suddenly throws something heavy at you, a crisis at work, an argument with someone you love, a sudden setback that rattles your plans, it's so easy to slip into panic and think, I can't handle this. Your chest tightens, your mind spins, and before you know it, you're believing every fearful thought. But the Buddha reminded us that the mind is like water. When it's turbulent, you can't see clearly. Only when you allow it to settle does the truth become visible. So instead of trying to force your mind to be perfect under stress, begin by simply noticing. Notice how quickly your thoughts rush to the worst-case scenario. Notice the urge to react without pausing. This awareness is your first step toward real control. When your mind feels like it's going to break under pressure, remember that feeling overwhelmed doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. Strength isn't about never feeling afraid or shaken. It's about what you choose to do when those feelings come. You can practice saying to yourself, right now I feel stress, but I don't have to become this stress. That tiny gap between feeling and reacting is where your power lives. The Buddha taught that suffering arises not just from pain itself, but from our resistance to it. So when something difficult happens, don't immediately push it away or label it as failure. Sit with it. Breathe into it. Remind yourself that no emotion is permanent and no thought is the ultimate truth. Building a mind that doesn't crack under stress doesn't happen overnight. It's like strengthening a muscle. Every time you face a challenge and choose not to collapse into old patterns, you grow a little steadier. Maybe you pause to take 3 deep breaths instead of yelling. Maybe you step outside for a walk instead of spiraling into worry. These small acts of choosing presence over panic are how you build resilience. Over time, you'll notice that situations that used to unravel, you start to feel more manageable. And when you feel tempted to think you're failing because you're struggling, recall the Buddha's words, "No one saves us but ourselves. No one can and no one may." We ourselves must walk the path. That means no one else can build this inner steadiness for you. But every time you choose to respond rather than react, you're proving to yourself that your mind can be your ally instead of your enemy. This is the kind of strength that can't be shaken by any storm. Before you rush back into your day, take one more gentle breath and remember this. You are not defined by how much you achieve or how perfectly you perform. You are the awareness that holds it all, quietly steady and already whole. If you'd like to keep exploring this path of simplicity and inner freedom, there's another video waiting for you right here that will guide you even deeper. Thank you for being part of Buddhist Journey with me. May you carry this peace into every moment ahead.